FKA Twigs is not only the British Charlie XCX, but no, she is a British artist who has been kicking around for quite some time now, to the point where if you looked at how young she actually looks, you wouldn't believe that she's like in her mid-30s at this point, but she has been around for about 10-ish years, dropping mixtapes, dropping albums, dropping EPs. Those EPs were the kickstarter of her career, getting a lot of acclaim from your indie music publications, the ones that like your artsy side of music, the art pop crowd were always hyping her up. I was part of that as well. I thought her album, LP1, her first one, was very bloody good. I thought Melissa, the EP, might have been even better, somehow. Yes, somehow even better. And then the Magdalene album, which came out 2-3 years ago now. Wow, that's kind of crazy. Was a really beautiful album on a lyrical level. Musically didn't quite live up to the heights of her writing on the album, in my opinion, but I still think it was a good outing from her and had some really fantastic tracks on it anyway. So she's proving that she's lyrically fantastic on Magdalene. She's proving that she's musically creative and boundary pushing at points on all of her projects so far to date, to be fair. So what's next for her? Well, you drop a mixtape with like the most pop oriented songs you've ever made, and it ends up being your best work to date. Yes, I'm gonna say it. This is the best thing I've heard FKA Twigs ever do. This right here is such a great culmination of like current British music trends. She brings together a lot of unique cultures coming in to the music, while also just broadening her horizons with the kinds of features that are coming on these tracks. We haven't really seen features like this ever on FKA Twigs songs, and she just feels like she's capturing all of the current musical trends going on in the UK at the moment, and she's just put it all in a blender and put it all onto one mixtape, and it has just created like a really, really great listen. Certainly to me, her most laid-back album, her most laid-back set of songs that are just so incredibly catchy in the most FKA Twigs way, but she puts this really cool spin on the tracks in her own way, while also just keeping them incredibly accessible. Ride the Dragon is a good example of that, starting off the album. Got the really weird little thing at the start where she sounds like she's Sally Hawkins in the film Shape of Water, and she's talking to the weird fishman guy, and she's telling him she made him a mixtape, and he's just replying with like, but the rest of the track is accompanied by lovely vocals and just a really sweet melody. It's such a great way to kick off the mixtape, because immediately you're seeing that, okay, she's doing something a little bit different here, and it's kind of catchy. And then Honda brings in the kind of like UK influence I was talking about, with the multitude of trends that we see happening in mainstream pop music over in the UK. This time you're getting that UK hip-hop flair, a bit of the grime coming through, but not quite so much, you know, heavily on the grime. It's got the Pa Silu feature, who I think is a really talented up-and-coming artist in the UK at the moment. He sounds great. The hook is great, kind of reminds me of Panda by Designer a little bit, with the Honda. It's just really cool to see these worlds colliding. If you told me that she was going to do this after Magdalene, I would have said, I would have not believed it. I just couldn't foresee a possibility where she'd suddenly go into this kind of style of music, but she kills it, and she sounds like she's right at home. And the Afro swing coming through as well just reminds me of something you'd hear on the radio. Like AJ Tracey could make this song, and you could have the features like Mabel, and you wouldn't bat an eyelid. Like, you'd think this is just a pop song at the top of the charts, but it's not. It's FKA Twigs doing this, despite her never really doing anything like this. Tears in the Club, a bit more of a somber, but also really super melodic tune, with The Weeknd bringing his usual R&B shtick to the table, sounding really good, sounding like they pair together really well too. I just like the flair of this one. It just has a bit of like a sad girl in the club vibes, you know what I mean? It's literally called Tears in the Club, but it works. You've got songs like Pamplemousse, which are just completely at the opposite end of the spectrum from what we've heard on this album. It sounds like Pink Pantheress on steroids or some shit. This track is just such a it's such a sugar rush, and it's so short as well. I feel like it could go on for longer, but it just feels like really weirdly experimental, but in the best kind of way. But Oh My Love is just such a cleanly sung track from Twigs here. It sounds so fresh. Like, the vocal performance here is so on point. To me, this feels like her blossoming into a butterfly moment, because I just don't feel like we've heard her voice so up front and center before, and it works so beautifully, and it just sounds so good. Prior to this, you know, she's always kind of had effects on her voice, or the instrumental is so jarring and strange and creative that you don't necessarily always pay full attention to her voice. And, you know, maybe she's kind of like altering her voice to match the tone of the song. This time around, it's just her voice, and she just can sing really well and make such a good pop tune. I really like the Everybody Knows That I Want Your Love little section that she, you know, repeats over and over. It reminds me actually a little bit of a Charlie XCX at this point. And I've got to sort of wonder if there is some influence on this album. I don't know if I've ever picked up on it before, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of more, you know, the more recent Charlie stuff is influencing her vocal style on this track, and maybe a few other tracks too. There's a few tracks as well I want to point out. I mean, there's so many tracks that could really be like hits in the UK, because like I said, she's just kind of culminating so many ideas that I've heard so commonly used in pop music in the UK over the past 6 or 7 years. So with that being said, because she's doing it so well, there are just a number of tracks that I feel like they could stretch out into the mainstream in such a out of nowhere way. I mean, Papi Bones, for example, this one is such a tune, man. Oh my days, goodness me, the dancehall flavor that comes through, the drums on this track as well. Really cool to see a Shy Girl feature on this. But yeah, this is just such a really summery tune that I have no reason to never hear this at a party. This has got to be played in that kind of environment at some point. Darjeeling as well, with the Georgia Smith feature. This is a great track, just a really like perfectly produced track, I feel, as well. I like how she's just playing around with some ad-libs on this one as well, just saying random shit. She even at one point says Crystal Palace brap brap brap. I can see she's got Conor Gallagher in her fantasy football Premier League team this year. The melody is so fluttery and beautiful on this one, and then the kind of like trap beats that kind of like break in sound really cool. Again, just sounds really modern and fresh, and just anything you'd imagine to become a hit. And the chorus as well, you're not alone. Yeah, this one's so good. And even Careless as well, with the Daniel Caesar feature. I always thought Daniel Caesar was pretty cool, actually. His last album wasn't so good, but the album before that I thought was really quite good. Just a really soft R&B track. Wonderful falsetto on this track is just so hard to ignore. And you know, I've said in the past, falsetto can be pretty tricky to please me, but my God, FKA Twigs has never really struggled in that department. I feel like she hits notes that no one else really can. Honestly, man, the vocal talent she has always been amazing, but god damn, on this album, I'm just picking up on so many things that's making me feel like at the moment, she is one of the best British vocalists, like, out there, easily. Such a raw talent, and such great, just so great to see it just being poured into such a well put together pop album. I mean, this is pop, really, isn't it? I mean, there's variations kind of breaking through. There's, you know, hip hop coming through. There's the dancehall stuff as well, the Afro swing type thing I was talking about, the R&B. But generally, this is her pop album. I do feel like Meta Angel and maybe Minds of Men don't quite go in that same direction. These tracks actually remind me of her slower tracks from her previous stuff, going a bit more like deeper in a lyrical way as well. Meta Angel, I quite like the way she's tackling imposter syndrome on the chorus, where she's like, there's always a voice in her head telling her that she's not quite good enough. And then Minds of Men feels a bit like a female uprising, kind of trying to tackle the many men that are in power across the world. Maybe it's not going that deep, but it does feel like that's what she's trying to go for. Yeah, not one of my favorite tracks, to be fair, and same with Meta Angel, but these are actually still solid tracks. I still enjoy them, despite them not quite being as show-stopping as many of the the other cuts on this album. And that's without even touching on the many interludes on this album where, you know, you've got the friends perhaps or people in her life kind of coming through, just sending some really inspiring messages to FKA Twigs. They're pretty heartwarming, not really ones that I think are necessarily, you know, ones that I'm going to be like excited to hear again, but I guess, you know, for interludes they're pretty okay. I can't really get mad at them. But yeah, you know what, with all that being said, this is great. This is really good, and another really early release for 2022 that is just so good that I can't believe I have this many albums that I'm loving this early on in the year. This never happens. I keep saying it, but it never really does. It really never does. And I'm really hoping there's more crossover with this album for Twigs. You know, I'd like to see her get the attention that she clearly deserves. She's been a really creative artist for a long time, and this could be the mixtape that breaks her and, you know, takes her beyond just being that kind of like, you know, artsy experimental artist that only people on the internet know. This could be the one that takes her beyond that, and I'd be very happy to see that happen. It truly should happen, and I just have a lot of fun with it. 8.5 out of 10, one of the best albums of the month so far, and there's been many already. And that's it. Thank you for watching this review. Do subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you think it is as good as I am saying, if you think it's worse, if you think it's even better. Let me know. Thank you as always. Have a good day and goodbye.